well-conceived business podcast around the Business is Bullshit podcast. I'm James Hornick. Joining me are two gentlemen who absolutely need an introduction, Jared Gibson and John Sirakus.
Thank you.
It always looks like John's holding back a fart at the beginning of these calls.
I'm holding back a lot.
Or just in general. All right. So, Jared, did you have anything? You said we got some feedback. So we're gonna try to change the format a little bit. This is episode 4 for us. First thing we're doing is we're not going to title the episode ahead of time because we realize we go way off topic sometimes and I'm talking about something different. We're also going to try to keep it tight. Kind of limit this to 30 minutes. Is there anything else you think we need to cover?
No, I just think if we go down rabbit holes, friends and family.
Did you have any further? So two podcasts in a row, we're talking about your situation with Chase. Did that get finally resolved? Because you said did you actually get the money back? I think that's what we're waiting for. You got the money's back. It's in your
money's back. Right. It's over. It is in the past.
All right.
It is in the past. Yeah. Hopefully nothing new happens. Knock on wood.
Did you change banks?
Okay.
No. Are you kidding me?
That would have been a good idea.
It's such a pain.
Change banks. Our entire family's everything's with Chase. We're not going.
He wants to click to cancel that Chase bank, which brings us right into the first topic. So, anyways, we were out the other night, and John had a topic he was really passionate about, and it's actually topical, and we think we can roll this into some other things. The FTC's click to cancel rule. So, John, give us an overview. Tell us all about this. Tell us what your take is, why you feel passionate about this, why you think what's bullshit about it, or bullshit about in general.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, there's a ton of companies that make it very difficult for you to stop working with them, right? Which is the worst. So, essentially, what the FTC is putting in place, and I think at this point it's probably around like 60 days. By the time this airs, it'll probably be 2 days. But what they want to do is essentially you're going to be penalized if it's not easy to stop working with you. So you just can't continually build somebody's credit card. So if you think of that gym membership you couldn't get out of, where you literally had to write a certified letter to get out of it. I mean, it might as well have used the Pony Express. Or Amazon Prime made it very difficult to stop getting billed for their service. Or you have those shitty little, I'm in a club where they send me a box every month of smelly candles or whatever that is. Well, somebody gets the candle box and it continually goes. Well, all of that is supposed to go away with this new law.
Yeah. And you were saying, because there's a couple of variations of it. One, the way they set the terms, but also what's the design? Dark design? What were you saying it was called?
Yeah, so it's called like dark design, where you make it very difficult, where you kind of abscond, or you make like a cancel to button like really light, on your account settings page. Even StreamYard the other day.
I was just about to say that's what happened to me in StreamYard. I thought I canceled, and I got billed after the trial, like literally. Because I was going through it quick, and it give you. I'm like, I want to end this because it wasn't working. So they're like, "Are you sure you want to end it?" And I'm like, and I click the big button, yes, and then I jump to do something else.
Are you sure? You're sure? Then I'm going to send you an email. Please click the email to verify that you're sure. Yeah.
But then I got billed. I got billed for it, and I'm like, I thought I canceled this. I went back through the process again, and that button that I clicked on was basically, we're gonna try again, or we do another route. Underneath that, though, and almost you could barely see the print. It says no, continue to cancel. I could barely read it.
Did you go back to Chase to contest the charge?
No, dude. I was having some PTSD from it, though. I mean, I reached back out to them, but then we ended up using it today, and I was like, shit. I guess it was $88 for one live stream.
And I created a new email just to do the dollar thing. So I canceled it before to get out of the 88. And that's the shitty thing about seeing how in building some SaaS products, we've been on the end of that where they want to make it more difficult. And it's not something I necessarily agree with. I think if somebody doesn't want to work with you, then just let them stop. It shouldn't be like applying for parole to stop using your service.
And in the business, it's what I like about it. It's Target. It's. I think it was created for consumers, but you bring up a good point when you're talking about business stuff. We always have to track every business subscription we have and then also like when their cancel date is, because it's never just like if you have a year's membership to something, it's never like, oh, that day you have they always put some bullshit terms in there. It's like must notify us 30 days before, 60 days before, 90 days before, whatever. And it's like a constant hassle just to remember, like, okay, if I do want to cancel something, did I find it in time, or are they going to say, according to our contract, you didn't notify us in time, so sign up for the next year? And it's just, I feel like every company does that. So
there's an advantage of that though. Like, and John, I want to hear the list, but like from a consumer standpoint, like we know that we can call our cable provider or we can call a whatever service provider and say like, hey, we're going to switch services, and they're going to back the Brinks truck up for us, right? They're going to give us all these free services, and we take advantage of that, right? So there are areas that we can take advantage of it being hard to cancel. Like, oh, you want to cancel this SaaS product? Well, how about we give it to you for 3 months and we continue to work with you on improving what you don't like about it, whatever that is. That's making it a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
but a lot of companies do that.
But
I don't think
you could do that without being a pain in the ass.
Yes, correct.
Like
I
you
get
could
it.
just like
How do you know? How are you proactive with those people though? How do you know those are the people that are going to be canceling it?
Well, I think it's a conditioned audience at that point. They call to cancel, or they try to cancel, and it says, "Hey, look, we have this offer for you if you want to stay." Like, to me, that is a better route rather than going through the whole rigmarole. Like, dude, cable companies, it's a nightmare to switch, or even credit cards. Apparently, back in the day. I have a quick credit card story. I wanted to cancel this card or whatever. Like, it was during the 2008 crisis. I like went to go buy like a pack of smokes, and
Wait,
I think I had like
Can you say that cooler than you just did? I went to go buy a pack of smokes.
I went to go get me a pair of Cowboy Killers, and I ran my credit card, and it would not even buy the cigarettes because the bank that I had the credit card through like reduced the limit down to like, I don't know, $2-3, right? And there was nothing on my card at the time. They were just trying to conserve their debt. So I called the credit card company, and this lady I'm talking to, just terribly annoying. She's like, "Well, I don't know, Tay." I was like, "I want to cancel my card." She's like, "Hold on a second." She like connects me to this other guy, and he was like the coolest guy. It was like talking with Barry White. He's like, "Hey, man,
Joe Marlborough." Joe Marlborough.
Yeah,
he was like talking, he just cranking a hoon.
Yeah.
What's the problem, John?
Yeah. And then I realized, like, dude, this guy's literally like seducing me to like stay with this credit card. He's like talking, I got to cancel. But like, it was like you were talking to your best friend. It's like, so what's going on over there, man? Like, tell me about it. You know, and it's all like all hot and angry and stuff. And I was realized like, oh, okay, this position exists for this purpose. Like he's the filter. That being said, there are tons of companies that can use that type of method rather than making it very difficult and penalizing people, like Adobe, charging people like 50% more as a penalty just to stop working with them in these hidden fees. So I'm all for this law.
I'm all for it too, but I'm also eagerly awaiting when it goes through the amount of bullshit lawsuits that will then pop up, because people will say like it was still too hard for me to cancel. You know what I mean? Dude. Like that's going to happen too. You know.
And I'm reading too, like the final rule. Sorry, this thing that you guys sent over. The final rule will provide a consistent legal framework by prohibiting sellers from, and then it lists it out, these 4 things. I don't know how they're going to regulate this. Like some of the stuff, it's too, I mean, but people are going to bitch to bitch. I mean, we've talked about that in every episode. Like people just bitch to bitch. We started a podcast to bitch to bitch.
Yeah,
this podcast.
That's not why I started it. Speak for yourselves. But
yeah.
But with that, you're right. There's going to be a certain capacity that they have to be able to deal with these cases. Because if you think of all of the robocalls, everybody's getting robocalls for years, right? And then just the spam. And until it hits a certain breaking point is when they're actually going to do something. But they can put the systems in place based on those complaints. They need to figure it out. This is the government. That's the job.
I don't think it'll be that hard in the grand scheme of things, because how hard is it to put like under your membership button a big giant button that says cancel? You know what I mean? Like I think it'll be a pretty easy open to shut case for anyone who's trying to bitch and say it was too hard to cancel. That like I'm assuming I don't think it'll be too hard to make some clear guidelines that this company was or wasn't following, whatever. So
does that go eventually dovetail into evergreen clauses?
It could, but I think a good example.
Conversation.
Okay, we'll say more about that.
So we're auto renewals. Let's call it auto renewals in contracts. Like, hey, if you don't let us know that you want to cancel by this date and time, you will be automatically renewed for another year's subscription.
So
yeah, that's what I was saying, is that we always get fucked by those. There's always the like, you have to let us know by a certain date. It's never the date that's actually renews on. It's always before that, which it's always hard to track.
I think in the fairness, though, it concerns resources and like resource deployment, right? So if it's like a SaaS platform or like cable, where it's just the economies of scale are just unlimited, right? You have whatever your costs are to set it up, and then each additional subscriber is negligible from a cost perspective. That's who it should pertain to. But if it's a service-based company where you're going to have like boots on the ground or people actually doing work or something, then that's a completely different game. You need runway, or that business is going to be penalized on account of a law like this.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jared, I like when John has an idea and is passionate about it, he actually has a lot more to say. It's actually fascinating. Like last week.
Yeah. Well, I think John, John's cocky as shit right now because he got a new mic and people can actually hear what the hell he's saying
for a great price.
All right, so this was John's. This is what he really wanted to talk about. I think it's a great topic. Then we're like, well, what else can we do? So the FTC is who was actually kind of spearheading this, and it's actually interesting because Lina Khan, the current head of the FTC, is, for some reasons unbeknownst to me, is considered controversial. And
she won't be around much longer.
Yeah, should be. She's great. We can argue over that one, but there's been a lot of things I don't remember in the years past or administrations past being like, oh, the FTC sure has done a lot, because I don't think the FTC typically does anything at all. But reading some of these things off, there's been challenges for big tech mergers. There was the Kroger-Albertsons merger. There's the Microsoft's cloud computing practices, which just came out. There's more news on that today. They're going to be hit up with a thing on this. There's the non-compete ban for workers, which is something I'm passionate about. And there is the addressing junk fees, which is another one. Enhancing right to repair, and there's been a lot more stuff around kind of data and AI. So they haven't pushed all this through, but they've been pretty active in terms of being a very pro-consumer stance in a lot of areas I think people are actually passionate about. We want to talk about a few more of these. Go ahead.
Are we sure Khan's out? Like, that is like, because I know that like she obviously came in under Biden appointed her, but yeah, it's not like Trump's stance and the Republican stance is not as like, Vance has come out in support of her in the past, some of the stuff that he's said. So, like, are we sure that she's out?
We don't know for sure,
but I would bet that that's going to happen.
Usually, who knows? I mean, Jay Powell, wasn't he a Trump appointment to begin with? And he went through the whole Biden administration, for the Fed, I think.
You can't fire the Fed, though. I think they have to resign.
That's right. That is a different thing. Yeah,
he came out and actually said that last week. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I mean, I know that like from a LinkedIn perspective, Reid Hoffman has come out and talked and does not like what she's doing, which makes sense because a lot of those tech companies,
it's a SaaS company.
So
right,
100%, they're going to open the door. There's going to be a lot more once Trump gets in. If she's out, there's going to be a lot more mergers that happen.
There was,
at least it seems like there will be.
And the thing, this is what happens when I'm a centrist, so when the new political party comes in, there's always like a big change. I think it was the CFPB or something, the Consumer Finance, Bureau or whatever, like Obama created that, and it had a lot of really good reasonings to protect like the housing market and some. Trump gets in, he's like, all right, fuck that. Like that thing goes to the wayside, right? Because in theory, it's regulation, and regulation is bad for business, right? But what this lady is doing is, I think, way better for business. I don't agree with everything that she's done, but as James was saying, over the last 40 years, nobody has taken a stance on like the federal trade like she has. They treated like every other policy like it was like low grade diarrhea. Like they didn't even care about it. It was just like, oh, okay, yeah, you'll get over it. Whereas like she's actually has some huge impact that is just going to make business more competitive and a lot of more people starting businesses. Yeah. So I think this is the direction. If the country is serious about business, they need to keep someone like her in place, and that's where they need to go, rather than this monopolistic type of economy we have.
And so that's actually brings up, there's actually two things I want to talk about kind of related to this. You tell me which one I'm going first. One thing that drives me crazy is people who conflate free market with capitalism, and it's not the exact same thing. Meaning, I'll just what the hell, I'll just go on this one.
Yeah.
When
screw that second one.
So when you deregulation, great, you deregulate things, but the problem is like capitalism inherently creates monopolies over time. Like eventually companies, if you let everyone run wild, eventually companies will merge and there'll only be one competitor left, which is inherently non-capitalistic. It's like, I'm a huge fan of capitalism, but anyone that doesn't realize the system inherently has flaws that requires intervention is completely lost the fucking plot of how it actually works. For example, probably the two best cases, Standard Oil and Bell Telephone. Standard Oil was a monopoly in 1911, was the first big like trust that got broken up. It got broken into, I think, 34 different oil companies. And now we're back to like 4 again. Like you can break them up, but they're just going to remerge over time. Same thing with Bell Telephone. Bell had, I think, it broken into 7 baby bells, and we're down to like 3 once again. And
what about Taco Bell?
4. We were down to 4 bells once again. But it's an important thing, because the problem is like you have to have competition for capitalism to work. But if like capitalism will also run their competitors out of business, so it does require on some level government intervention to make sure like the wheels keep turning. And by saying like deregulation is always the way to go, kind of misses that point, which is what kind of drives me crazy. And people like, what a free market. Well, free market creates non-free markets inherently. So that's one, which is why I like what she's doing with a lot of the stuff with the more kind of trust busting type stuff she's trying to do. Now, the second part I want to talk about too is also why I'm a fan is like regulatory capture. Now, regulatory capture is probably the biggest problem at all the administrative level. If it's the FTC, FCC, SEC, you name it, the biggest issue with all these government branches is the fact that the companies that they're regulating end up running the branch. And it causes massive problems every single time. 2008 financial crisis, we basically let Goldman Sachs and everyone else run the SEC and that's why that happened. FDA, the opioid crisis, you let all these pharmaceutical companies have too much say in how things should be regulated, created that entire thing. Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010, when they started dumping all kinds of oil, it's because they let the companies that do the oil production tell them this is how we shouldn't be regulated. And it's oftentimes because FAA, Boeing.
And Boeing. Yeah. Like
FDA,
how many people died there?
Yeah. But if you as a business owner, like, and you're at that level, it is a great idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do we get those people to come work for us? Because can you imagine being like an NFL team and be like, dude, we're going to actually have the refs on our team.
Exactly. But if you look back, I did some research. I look back the last 4 chairs of the FTC. There was Joseph Simons, Maureen Alhausen, Edith Ramirez, Joe Leibowitz. They're all lawyers working at firms that represent companies going against antitrust stuff. So basically all the companies they decided not to pursue, they became friends with, and now they represent a lot of them to make money off them after the fact, all by not doing their job when they're in the FTC, which is just fantastic to me. So
yeah, government should be called "Government is Bullshit."
Government is bullshit.
I mean, but how do you change that? Like, what changes that? Like, it's a tale as old as time. It's the same shit over and over again.
But you know, so I gave an interesting counterpoint because like if you're at that level, you're going to be doing that, right? And I think it's just public scrutiny, and this is maybe where the media comes in and plays a part, because when you're shining lights on those things, it makes some people uncomfortable, not necessarily Monsanto so much. But what's also interesting is the way that we look at companies in our country is really different than other countries do. The brands, we're very transactional and commercial, right? But if you go to like Japan, like the way that they have a lot of pride over like Sony and Mitsubishi and their brands, or even in Germany, like BMW and VW, here we're like, burn them fucking down. You know what I mean? Just like instantly, which I think is a natural mechanism.
We got our clip.
But I think it's like a natural mechanism.
What was that voice
that keeps it control?
Potentially. I think it may be rolling into another one. Let's talk about the non-compete thing, because I think that might also kind of give some mic. So when the non-compete ban came out, I work in, I'm a recruiter. I know this space very well. Non-competes it's right there in the name. It's a non-compete clause. There's nothing more bullshit. Like, the whole point is to have competition. there's no way, shape, or form which anyone's ever going to tell me that like tying employees, especially you're talking like entry level workers, to non-compete clauses.
That's where it's the worst.
It's just absolute nonsense. Like, and for every other thing, like for whether it's NDAs or whether it's non-solicit, there's other agreements you can have in place to make sure people don't leave your company and take all their secrets with them without tying them to non-compete, which is specifically designed to make people not allowed to work anywhere unless they're working at your company. Anyways, FTC came out with that ruling, and naturally it came up with a ton of resistance. Chamber of Commerce, which is the worst organization in the world. But like, you know, all these they take it to the courts tie it up. Right now it's in legal limbo. Like, it's no one's sure if it's going to go through or not. But what annoyed the hell out of me was when this thing first happened, there were so many people who they weren't disagreeing with non-competes. They just don't like how it happened. They're like, well, this is Congress's job. Like, you know, these agencies shouldn't have the right to do this. But I'm like, but Congress isn't going to do it. Like, I think everyone agrees. Everyone who claims to be pro-worker, which is both parties, like, but neither party wants to actually make get rid of non-compete bans. And of course, we know why. It's because they're all funded by big companies who want everything going in their favor, which again goes back to why regulatory capture happens. Because if you like, ideally, if you could have term limits and get the special interest money out of Washington, then Congress would take care of this shit, but they don't. And so that goes to these executive agencies, which also don't take care of it because they're probably even easier to bribe after the fact.
So let me ask you this. So we think about non-competes, and I think that it's ridiculous. I agree with you. Like, Jimmy John's has a non-compete.
Yeah.
I was looking into this. Like, Jimmy John's has a non-compete. I saw that, is it California does not have or has strict
state
regulations
levels have
against?
in certain states they have very strict rules against, which why don't we have that here in Illinois? We do this, like, California completely, you can't uphold them. So if you're in California, you don't have to worry about it. If you're in other states, you do.
So where you talked earlier about like certain like circumstances. So for example, controls. I'm going to pay for your MBA. And I want to make sure you don't leave as soon as you get your MBA and go to a competitor of ours, right? Yeah. So what are certain things that you can put in place that may not be a non-compete that prevents people? Because from a corporate side, like, there's a lot of secrets and a lot of intel, a lot of proprietary information that a business has that cannot get into the hands of a competitor. Or I'm about ready to spend a lot of money to get this employer, this group of people, these MBAs. What's to say they can't just leave? Like, so where's that line?
You can create individual pieces for the if you're paying someone to get an MBA, you could make a separate, like, part of their agreement, a separate thing they sign off on. If they do take this money for their MBA, they have to stay for so many years. Otherwise, if they leave early, they have to pay part of it back, which is totally fair, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so that's an easy one for that. For the NDA stuff is where it gets tricky, because I think this was one of the criticisms, even if non-competes do get struck down, is that really the non-compete was not, because they're not really enforceable. It's just that no one working at a Jimmy John's can afford to hire a lawyer to fight a non-compete clause. Like, that's really what the trick is. The companies want to send you cease and desist and threaten to sue you, and no one can deal with that. So whatever.
Let me show you a more efficient way to cut your ham. Like, I learned it in my old in my old gig.
But the fear is that the companies could do the same thing with NDA clauses. Like, if non-competes get struck down, now we can make you sign an NDA clause, and you can't say anything you ever learned. Like, because I've seen some people lose. There was a couple notable cases in the recruitment industry where the person doing the suing at this firm lost. But they were trying to say that, like, the most basic mundane task that every recruiter does was like their proprietary knowledge, which the judge was able to say, yeah, that's bullshit. But this was a case where the people who left to go start their own firm had the money to fight back in court and won the case. But even still, that had to cost a lot. But long story short, to your question, like, NDAs are the tricky area too, because that's a separate thing that's not technically non-compete, but it could function the same way in terms of legal threats.
What about jacking clients?
That's a non-solicit issue, which I think that it's. I'm less concerned about jacking. I should say, I'm more okay with some sort of thing around clients specifically.
I knew as soon as you said that. I looked at John and he couldn't hold it in. He's like a fucking child. I was less concerned about jacking.
Yeah. Anyways. Yeah, I don't think it's as big of an issue because I think there is some realization if you just signed some company to a 3-year deal of some sort or some major, and then you leave to go do it somewhere else, like there usually is like a 1-year limit or something like that anyway. But that's not stopping you from going out and starting a new career and starting your own firm and finding your own new clients, or it's very less. It's the non-compete's a method of you're not allowed to work, you're not allowed to live and make a livelihood, versus non-solicit's like you just have to respect the fact that you need to wait a year or two before you work with the exact same person.
So my view on this is I think it's super tricky. I don't agree with it like wholesale. I think, you shouldn't give it to like low-level employees, because even like the click to cancel law or any of those, like those literally hurt the poorest people. Right?
Yeah.
Like somebody that's working in fast food, they can't switch, and then they have all these credit card things that they can't, turn off. Right. So that being said, but in some respects, business is like war, right? So you want to protect as many of your secrets and assets and resources as possible. So I think there needs to be certain things in place, especially if you're dealing with companies that are having advanced technologies where that is a reality. Because just the things that a person learns there, they're going to then go and take over in that same space. And it is super damaging to a company from an innovation level that hasn't hit their tipping point yet, where they can actually get the profits from the money invested yet.
The problem is there's so many different individual cases. Like we're trying to apply one rule across,
agreed. It's
thousands
abused.
of companies.
We can all agree that it's abused.
Yeah. I think that if I'm going off memory here, that what they came out with was you had to have a certain level of equity to be immune from it. Like people, like if you're a co-founder, you own the quarter of the company, like you have a non-compete. There was a certain threshold in how much equity.
It's like a fiduciary duty at that point.
Yeah, that was part of it. I think they also said there was like a grandfathering clause too, where people in non-competes now over a certain salary range are still bound to them, but won't be in their next job. But anybody starting a job from here on out won't be covered. And it was like 150K or something like that.
Yeah. So my wife is an employment attorney, as you guys know, and she actually posted on LinkedIn about this when it first came out, like what it meant. I got her to do video on LinkedIn, like big thing here. But one of the things that she does say is like a lot of the legal language around it and most of these contracts is bullshit. Like that it's not, you can't like hold, most of this stuff would never unenforceable.
But I know a guy, he worked for a company that was in like the restaurant supply space, right? And he signed a 10-year non-compete in this space. He wasn't like an executive or anything. He was like a mid-level employee, he did their SEO and web development. And working with me, we were pulling on restaurant clients, and the guy came after it, and it was enforced. So
what state was this? It is state by state. Where was
Florida? It was Florida.
Yeah, like I every state's gonna be different how they view this stuff. Like I said, California, like they're not even legal to begin with. Illinois is very worker friendly. You can have non-competes, but it's impossible to win them, but they'll still go to court. That's the thing. Is like, so, but in Florida, maybe it just.
Do you guys have non-competes?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have non-compete?
Oh, I have? No, we don't make our own.
Do you guys have non-competes?
Not for individual contributor level people, no.
Okay.
No. And usually companies, I don't know. I've seen a lot of companies that force people to sign these things as they typically have either they're working with, a certain level of people, or they just don't have a really good culture, right? Like call centers and things like that. I mean, dude, I don't know if you guys have ever like hired call centers or worked with call centers, but they're all out in the parking lot. It's a seedy bunch sometimes, right? Depending on the call center.
Wait. Sorry. I mean, I got to go back just like I do in every episode. What are they doing in the parking lot, John?
Oh, dude! Dude, they're smoking anything that can burn, brother. So, and granted, there are really good people that work at call centers, but there are also some places that just turn and burn, and they just hire like shitty people. So businesses like that, I think, are more prone to prey on the people that they're working with and just try to tie them up so they won't leave. Right? They just try to trap them into these really shitty jobs, which is super unethical.
Well, we had in our early days when we were really small, when we were 10 people or so, we hired someone who is a partner with us now, launched a new, but like this is, 10, 15 years ago. He was working at one of the largest recruiting firms around, and they tried to sue him and us for hiring. This is a guy who's like a year out of school, right? At that point in time, I'm like, what secrets do you guys possibly have? But they knew they could because they were 100 times more our size. You know what I mean? And we weren't going to fight this in court, so our solution was to have him recruit in a completely unrelated area, which started a new practice area for us, which grew, so worked out well. But yeah, it's not just a drain on the worker, it's a drain on the companies that could potentially hire those workers, anyways.
We're at 30 minutes.
We are at 30 minutes. Is there anything else you guys want to shoehorn in real quick? I think we covered a lot.
Have they cured AIDS? I've been hearing mixed things on that. Have they? No? Okay.
We don't cure stuff anymore. Well, I think it was old Chris Rock. We don't cure stuff anymore. We just make you live with it. That's
good. All right.
That is a wrap for episode 4 of the Business is Bullshit podcast. Still going, guys. We're going to make it.
Subscribe, like, share, engage, however you can.
Catch us on iTunes and Spotify, I think, are the 2 main channels, and YouTube. Anyways, James Hornick, Jared Gibson, John Sarakis signing off, reminding you that business is bullshit.